A student named Ryu found himself blinded by an immense light. When he opened his eyes, he was stunned by what he saw. A king was declaring that the hero summoning ceremony had succeeded. Thus, he proclaimed they could defeat the demon king, and his queen felt relieved. But the students gathered before them all looked confused, especially the girl named Hana. Suddenly, one student stepped forward and introduced himself as Kazu. The queen named Lucy introduced herself as well, and expressed her honor at meeting them. Kazu then said God had informed them, and asked if their mission was to defeat the demon lord. Hearing this, the king and queen fell silent for a moment. When they confirmed it, Kazu happily assured them their best. Meanwhile, Ryu stared at his hands, and was unable to believe they were in another world. Unlike him, Kazu looked confident, and the class even cheered for him. Ryu admitted Kazu was an intelligent class leader, though his nature was complicated. As for himself, he just realized their class was summoned to another world. His attention then turned to a beautiful girl whom he assumed a princess. At that moment, Kazu asked how to use the power they received from God. In response, Lucy called for her daughter Shara, who quickly stepped forward. She bowed and introduced herself as the kingdom's third princess. After that, she told them to check status screens so training matched their strengths. But Hana raised her hand and asked what a status screen was. So she explained it showed their abilities by saying the word status. After understanding this, Kazu looked at the others and asked if they were ready. So the entire class then shouted the word. While everyone else began viewing their screens, Ryu could only stare at them in confusion. After a moment, he decided to try it as well. When his status appeared, he saw that he was only level 1, yet all his stats were abnormally high, so he stared at the numbers in disbelief. He then checked his titles and saw Supreme God's Favor, along with magic of many different types, but this only made him more confused, and he continued tapping through the screen. But every one of his skills was already at level 10, so he began to feel nervous. Completely bewildered, he wondered if his status screen was wrong, since none of it seemed normal. However, after seeing his overwhelming stats, titles, magic, and skills, he began to wonder if he had been blessed by the gods themselves. Thinking about it, he questioned whether everyone else was the same, and turned to look at Hana. He also asked about her status, and she looked back at him in confusion. But when he caught a glimpse of her screen, he froze, since she had the Sage title. At that moment, he realized that he was truly the odd one out. But he also thought that if it's not a bug, he might have the strongest cheat abilities. Yet his thoughts were cut off when Hana asked to see his status, and he quickly agreed. As she looked through it, her eyes widened when she realized there was still more, so she continued scrolling, and grew increasingly frustrated. Ryu noticed and asked if she was surprised. She admitted that she was, but also said that she felt relieved. However, this confused him, so she nervously explained. She told him that he had always been bullied before, but now he would no longer have to worry about that. Hearing this, Ryu agreed and recalled how each day in their world felt like hell. Back then, the bullies would order him to buy drinks for them from the vending machines. But they were not the only ones who did this. Kazu had done the same and casually told him not to take too long. So, Ryu would leave the classroom and buy the drinks using the money he earned from his part-time job. He never refused, because he knew what might happen if he did. Unfortunately, the bully confronted him. He scolded Ryu and kicked him simply for being late, while the other students only laughed and watched. Just then, Hana arrived and questioned what was happening. She went to Ryu's side and checked on him. Hearing her voice, Ryu turned and saw Hana was clearly worried. However, Hana was the prettiest girl in school, and Ryu feared bullies would target her for helping him. Because of this, he pulled his arm away from her, which left her stunned, but he still ignored her reaction and stood on his own, while the bullies just laughed at them. Therefore, Ryu could only clench his teeth and think that his life truly felt miserable. Back in the present, Hana confessed she was frustrated for never being able to help him. However, she believed he kept his distance to protect her. Ryu quickly denied it, so she insisted that she knew him well and that he was a kind person. Hearing this, he fell silent and realized that she might be the only one who saw him that way. Knowing that she had even been angry on his behalf, he sincerely thanked her. Listening to this, she was stunned and said it was nothing. But while her face turned red, Ryu's attention was drawn to a voice calling the heroes. Shara announced she would verify their status screens and asked everyone to keep them open. Thus, Kazu immediately volunteered to go first, and she accepted. While Shara examined Kazu's screen, Ryu was surprised she could see their statuses at all, so he glanced back at his own screen and wondered if he would be alright. Previously, Ryu had awakened in a strange place. He quickly sat up and wondered where he was. As he tried to understand his surroundings, he recalled their classroom had just been swallowed by light. It had poured in through the windows and struck everyone inside, including him, who had immediately covered his face with his arms. Now back in the present, he continued to question where he was. Just as he thought nothing was there, someone descended from above. A man approached him from behind and called him by name, which startled him. But the man quickly apologized for bringing him there without any warning. So Ryu was left speechless, and he could not help but notice that the man was floating. Yet he managed to brush off his shock and forced himself to stay calm. After that, he turned to face him. Then he asked who he was. The man fell silent and stopped stroking his long beard. After that, he swung his cane and declared himself the god above all. Ryu quickly panicked at the declaration and wondered if the man was truly important. God confirmed it and even invited him to talk, which made Ryu think he is easygoing. Once seated, God explained 4 things. First, their entire class would be sent to another world. Second, they would gain cheat abilities to avoid dying easily. Third is they would be tasked to defeat demon lords as heroes. Then fourth is that Ryu was the last in class to hear it. While he was still trying to process it, God raised his cane to grant Ryu cheat abilities. He also explained the powers were tailored for him, and Ryu's body began to glow. But when he looked at his hands, he felt no different. Moments later, God began sending him away, and this shocked Ryu with how sudden it felt. However, as his body vanished, he felt disappointed to still be stuck with his classmates. Back in the present, Shara began checking Ryu's status screen, and she was clearly stunned by what she saw. Ryu saw her reaction and asked if she was shocked, to which she admitted it, so he tried to reassure her that he was not weak and that it might be fine, but her silence only made him uneasy. After a long moment, he finally saw her look up at him. She then explained that with such power, he might betray them and risk immediate execution. Hearing this, Ryu was horrified since he had just arrived, and his life was already in danger. Noticing how he trembled, Shara began to soften. So she decides to compromise, and tells him that she has a proposal for him. She then proposed that she would not report his true strength to her parents. But Ryu was taken aback and asked if she could do that, to which she confirmed it. Yet this made him ask if she was not afraid of him at all. In response, she made it clear that she did not fear him in the slightest. She also explained that she possessed a skill called clarity, which allowed her to see into people's hearts. This made Ryu ask how his own heart appeared to her, so she looked at him and fell silent for a moment. After a while, she explained his heart was purer than the others, though it still bore a few dark spots. She then glanced at the rest, and added that the heroes' statuses were all magnificent, yet none of them were as overwhelmingly strong as Ryu. In addition, she revealed the others had hearts clouded with muddy colors, with only a few exceptions. Hearing this, Ryu quietly pieced everything together. He remembered her strange reaction to Kazu, who was skilled at hiding his true nature. After realizing this, he looked at his hand. He then clenched it and reminded himself that he had to control his power carefully. Later that night in his room, he collapsed onto the bed. Each of them was given a private room, which showed the royal family's generosity. Even so, he could not stop thinking about his abnormal stats. So he tapped one of his titles, and new information immediately appeared on the screen. As he looked, he realized that these were the cheat abilities God had given him. But when he read Supreme God's Favor, which boosted his stats, max skills, and cut experience to 1/10, he wondered if God had gone too far for him. Nevertheless, these boosts made him think he might be invincible now, and that thought made him suddenly stand up. Staring at his screen, he began thinking about how he could use these cheat abilities. The faces of his bullies appeared in his mind, and the idea of revenge crossed his thoughts. Hence, his expression darkened and a faint smile formed on his face. The next morning, he woke early and walked to the castle's inner garden before breakfast. He also closed his eyes and began to focus, so he quickly sensed the core of magic within his body. When he raised his hand, he released a small flame, and he felt satisfied seeing this since he realized that creating a fireball was simple. But while he was testing it, Shara suddenly arrived. She saw the flame in his hand and strongly questioned what he was doing. Upon seeing the shock on her face, he quickly asked if something was wrong. She then replied that there was since he had arrived only the day before and was already using magic. Still, he explained that he had simply tried random things until something worked. Yet he found it impossible to believe, since even talented mages needed weeks to do it. Ryu then extinguished the flame as she admitted that his talent made it less surprising, though she was utterly stunned when water suddenly formed in his hand as well. Seeing that he did not even need an incantation, she questioned him again, but he only looked confused, so she could only sigh and say that she could no longer be surprised. With that, she said she was supposed to train all the heroes, but will personally oversee Ryu's training, but made him ask if she truly meant it, and she confidently confirmed. She also mentioned that she was the youngest person in history to become a court mage. However, Ryu's attention drifted to her chest, and when she noticed his gaze, he quickly looked away. Afterward, he asked if he could see her status screen, and she agreed. When it appeared, he saw that she was a level 54 great sage and saintess with balanced stats, so he commented it was amazing, though his complicated expression made her angry. She then insisted her stats were excellent by court mage standards, while his were far too abnormal. Seeing her sulk, he could only apologize to her. In the end, he shyly told her that he would be in her care from then on, while she reluctantly responded by accepting that it could not be helped. Later in the dining hall, Ryu arrived and began wondering where he should sit. As he looked around, Hana noticed him and quickly called him over. She pointed to the empty seat beside her, and although he felt confused, he agreed. So she happily pulled him along and made him sit down. But sitting beside the most popular girl in class instantly drew hostile stares from several boys. While he was thinking how troublesome this would be, someone suddenly approached. Then his chair was kicked to get his attention. The bully named Kanza then questioned why Ryu was sitting next to Hana. In response, Ryu explained that he was only there because Hana had invited him, but Kanza grabbed his collar and ordered him to leave the seat. This time, Ryu realized that he no longer needed to be afraid since his stats were far stronger, so he firmly told the bully not to touch him. Upon hearing this, the surrounding students fell silent. However, Kanza was annoyed by Ryu's words, so he raises his fist towards him and challenges him. Before it could reach Ryu, Hana shouted for him to stop, so his fist froze in midair. After a moment of hesitation, he finally released Ryu. Though he made it clear he would remember this, Ryu ignored him while Hana quickly checked on him. Ryu then told her he was fine, and thanked her, but she replied she had done nothing. She added that she already knew he was far stronger than Kanza. That's why she was impressed that he had not even used his power. Hearing her words, Ryu felt embarrassed. Afterward, their special training began, and in the first week, everyone learned magic basics. However, Ryu trained separately in the back garden, where Shara instructed him to attack practice targets. Hence, he quickly formed a flame in his hand. Then he hurled it towards the targets without hesitation. But the targets were completely burned, which leaves both him and Shara in shock. Seeing his reaction, Shara explained that he had simply gone a little overboard and encouraged him to continue. From the very first day, he received intense practice like throwing fireballs under her guidance. He also learned to summon flowing water, and with Shara coaching him one-on-one, he continued refining his power. Later, she even invited him to a tea party, and the two of them talked happily, with Shara appearing especially cheerful. During another mealtime, Ryu was eating quietly when Hana approached. She then began asking his permission to sit beside him, and he agreed. While on it, he noticed that she acted the same as always, yet he found that Kanza had stopped bothering him. After 2 weeks in the new world, it was finally time for him to join his classmates again. However, he could not help noticing both Kazu and Kanza among them, so he wished he could avoid working with them, just as Shara suddenly called out to him. Shara saw his expression and asked if he didn't get along with the heroes, and he admitted it, though he added that at least Hana felt like an ally to him. Hearing this, Shara thought of Hana's beautiful face and fell into deep thought. After a moment, she suddenly grabbed Ryu's hand. She then declared that she was his ally as well, which made him respond awkwardly by thanking her. After that, the group training which Ryu found boring continued. During one session, Kazu even clumsily struck one of the knights by mistake. At the same time, Shara could not hide her jealousy over Ryu's interactions with Hana. A month later, the knight commander said their mission would be easy, though they would face a real monster, so he urged them to stay focused and give their best. In response, all of the heroes agreed. Meanwhile, Ryu quietly observed, knowing that this would be their first dungeon challenge, and since everyone stayed at level 1 in training, he felt excited they could finally level up. Suddenly, Hana grabbed his arm. She began to ask him to team up with her, and he said that he did not mind, especially since they were required to form pairs for the dungeon. But they were abruptly interrupted when Kanza called out to Hana. He insisted that he should be the one to protect her instead of Ryu. However, Hana rejected him by saying that no one would want to team up with him. Hearing this, Kanza was left speechless, yet Hana quickly pulled Ryu away and ignored him. Later inside the dungeon, Ryu asked if she was sure about her choice. He reminded her standing up for him might put her in danger, but she said that was not the reason. She revealed Kanza kept confessing, and she was tired, but Ryu felt sorry for him. While he's relieved it wasn't because of him, Hana's attention was caught by something, so when he looked ahead, he saw a goblin. He then immediately summoned lightning, and asked her to leave it to him. Afterwards, they defeated several monsters, and he defeated each with a single strike. Later that night in his room, he opened his status screen. He then began to check it to see if he's at least level 2. But instead, it showed that he was already level 37. Shocked by this, he wondered how this was possible and concluded it was the god's blessing boosting his growth. Looking closer, he discovered that he had gained new skills, including bloodlust and weapon creation. When he checked bloodlust, he He learned it could petrify or kill so ordinary people wouldn't survive due to his stats. He then checked his weapon creation that could form any weapon, but would cause trouble if revealed, so he decided to close his status screen for now. He then thought being the only one with such overwhelming cheats was absurd. Even so, he decided to push himself and see how far he could go in the dungeon. On the 5th day of dungeon exploration, Hana asked Ryu his level and he replied 100, but he quickly stopped mid-sentence and made her confused. He then quickly declared that he was around level 20, and she replied that she was too. Unbeknown to her, he was sweating nervously because he almost blurted out his real level. While he thought of how he paired with Hana after being used to the dungeon, Hana hoped to level up, so he said they'd aim for the 30th floor, but warned of stronger foes from the 21st, and she agreed. Later, as they walked deeper inside, they encountered 2 wolves. The sight of them stunned both of them. As the demon wolves were extremely large, suddenly, one of the wolves lunged forward. The 2 hurriedly dodged, and Ryu told Hana to leave it to him, but he noticed that they were inside a cave and could not use fire magic freely, so he chose wind magic instead to be safe. He quickly struck the first wolf, then the second, and both of them soon collapsed to the ground. After that, Ryu suggested moving forward, and Hana quickly agreed. When they reached stage 22, Hana began using her power against the bats attacking them. They later arrived at stage 27, where Ryu continued using wind magic against a monster bee. After a while, they reached stage 29, and Hana excitedly said her level rose by 6 while Ryu claimed his rose about the same. But in truth, his level had increased by 100 in just a single day. Moving on, Hana asked if they should go back since they had reached the 30th floor, and he agreed. 1 month after transmigrating, their dungeon conquest went so smoothly they reached the 50th floor. The 2 pushed open the door and entered the room together, but they only found that there was nothing inside. Suddenly, Ryu sensed something, but Hana, who was unaware of the danger, just began talking, so he rushed toward her to shield her. Still, she was shocked by his sudden action and called out his name. At that moment, an animal appeared, and they saw that it was a white wolf. Ryu quickly wondered if this was the boss, since it even possessed a concealment skill. He then asked Hana if she could handle it, and she assured him that she could. So the 2 hurriedly prepared to attack. At the same time, the white wolf charged at them. Ryu easily kicked it away. Then he followed up with wind magic. As he moved to finish it, a voice stopped him, so he quickly turned around to see who it was. Kanza and Kazu then appeared, whom he had assumed were here to cause trouble. Regardless, Kanza ordered Ryu not to interfere, while Kazu declared that they would be the ones to defeat the wolf. Hearing this, Ryu thought they were the real nuisance and let them do as they pleased. Thus, the 2 rushed toward the wolf, but it quickly defeated them both, and this made Ryu silently remark that they were weak. They then checked the 2, and Hana wondered if they only passed out, while Ryu questioned if they were really his bullies. Meanwhile, the wolf was still alive, and suddenly lunged toward them again. Hana quickly raised her hand while declaring that she would handle it, and Ryu agreed. She summoned multiple arrows above the wolf, and with determined eyes, she sent them piercing down into its body. Right after her attack, Ryu jumped forward with his sword. Then he struck the wolf without hesitation. At that instant, its body began to vanish. However, Ryu was shocked by the chest's appearance, so Hana said it was the boss reward. They then proceeded to open the chest. When they found only white wolf fangs, Hana suggested returning, and Ryu agreed. However, they suddenly stopped after remembering something. They saw Kanza and Kazu still unconscious and realized leaving them would cause trouble. Later, as Ryu carried them, Hana praised him, but he just laughed since it was thanks to his cheat. Soon, they met the commander, who asked what happened to Kanza and Kazu. So Ryu said they lost to the boss, while Hana added he beat the white wolf. Hearing this, the commander said even veterans struggled with it, but Ryu found it easy. Setting that aside, Ryu informed the commander about the item that came from the treasure chest. When he showed them, the commander was shocked since they were rare white wolf fangs. Knowing that, Ryu asked how to use it, and the commander said they could be forged into a sword. So Ryu thought of making a weapon, and the commander offered to speak to the blacksmith. Still, he asked Hana if she wanted one, but she said she didn't need a sword. Knowing this, he asked if there's another choice, and the commander said they could be made into a pendant. He then offered Hana a pendant, and she agreed, though worried it might reduce sword materials, but he assured her that it was fine since they had defeated the boss together. Hearing this, she sincerely thanked him. Later, back at the castle, Shara happily greeted Ryu. When he said he was finally home, she warmly welcomed him and told him that everything was ready. Recently, his routine after the dungeon was reporting battle results to Shara over tea. So when she heard he'd defeated a white wolf, she praised him, but he clarified Hana had helped too. At that, he noticed that she suddenly seemed agitated. Setting that aside, she asked how the dessert tasted, and he replied that it was delicious. She quickly grew excited, so she asked if he meant it, and he assured her. With that, she admitted she made them and worried they might not suit him, but he praised them. Hence, she asked if she could make them for him from now on. He then quickly agreed and said he looked forward to it, though she still reminded him not to get his hopes up too much. The next day, Ryu woke up early, only to remember that it was his first day off. So he sat wondering if he should laze but chose to make something of the day. Hence, he got ready and dressed properly. After finishing, he checked himself in the mirror to make sure he was presentable. When he opened his door, he was surprised to see Shara just about to knock. He then quickly apologized, but she said she was fine, and asked if he was heading out. When he said he was thinking of going into town, she excitedly offered to show him around, but he asked if she was sure, and she immediately confirmed it. Later in town, he could not help noticing that Shara looked different today, which startled her, so he quickly clarified that he meant she was always cute, and this made her turn red. Following this, he asked if it was really safe for her to go out without a guard. She replied she had gone out alone before, which made him wonder if she had sneaked out. Hence, she clarified she had not sneaked out and had received permission before leaving. However, he was surprised she read his mind, and she laughed saying he had that look. Still, he commented that it felt like they were completely in sync, which made her blush again. She then moves on by visiting the market, then the cathedral for an interesting experience, which left him confused. After a while, they finally arrived at the cathedral. Ryu was amazed by its size, and she explained that it was the largest cathedral in the country. She added that each person could summon either a demon or a spirit, but only once in their lifetime. Hearing this, he asked if she had summoned one, and she said not yet, so she wanted to try today. When they entered the cathedral, they were greeted by a priest. They were informed the summoning ritual cost 5 coins each, so Shara paid 10. The priest then said they could start, and asked if they wanted the ritual explained, but she said she'll do it. Soon, a magic circle appeared on the carpet. Shara explained, releasing more mana raised the chance of a stronger summon on it. With that, she decided to go first, and Ryu agreed. She then raised her hand and called for her summon to appear in response to her mana. The magic circle immediately lit up. An animal ear appeared first, followed by its entire body as the smoke cleared. The kitten then quickly approached Shara's feet, so she picked it up, introduced herself, and named it Misha. Meanwhile, Ryu thought it looked like an ordinary kitten, so she explained that it was a spirit. She also explained spirits were ranked in order: God tier, Emperor tier, Super tier, High tier, and Low tier, and that the one in her arms was a high tier spirit. After this, she urged him to take his turn. Ryu then proceeded to raise his hand toward the magic circle. Following it, he called for his summon to appear in response to his mana. When the circle lit up, the light was so intense that they both had to close their eyes. As the smoke rose, the outline of a human figure could be seen forming behind it. Ryu slowly opened his eyes. Before him appeared a figure like an angel, who asked if he was the one who summoned her. When he confirmed it, she called him master and asked for a name. However, he was shocked by the way she addressed him. He then said he didn't want to be called that, and she asked how to address him instead. So he said she could just call him Ryu, and she agreed, though he felt she still treated him like a lord. But while they discussed naming her, Shara stood nearby in shock. After a moment, Ryu decided to call the girl Coco. Hearing this, Coco said that she liked the name, which made him feel relieved. He then asked if she was a spirit, and Coco said she was God tier, which shocked Shara. Noticing her reaction, Ryu asked if something was wrong. She whispered that there was only one God tier spirit in the entire world. Even so, Ryu casually told Coco that he looked forward to working with her, and she agreed. Shara grew irritated at his calmness, but he said it was good since they had a powerful ally. Hearing this, she had to admit that he was right. Later outside, Ryu asked if the king was fine with Coco, and Shara said it was expected since others likely succeeded too. He then realized his classmates were also summoning, but she said only he had called a god tier. Meanwhile, Coco was being stared at by the people around. With that, Ryu asked her to hide her noticeable wings, and she agreed. She proceeded to focus until the wings vanished from sight. After that, she said the wings were invisible but still there, and Ryu said it looked fine. Moving on, he thought about where Coco would stay, but she said she didn't mind sharing his room. Shara was clearly shocked by this, and Ryu seemed about to agree, so she quickly protested, and this drew everyone's attention. Realizing this, she tried to explain to him. She said it was impossible, but Ryu insisted, so she argued there were rooms. She then added that it would not be fair for her if Coco stayed with him. However, he was confused and asked what she meant, so she quickly said it was nothing. Later that night in his room, Ryu slumped onto his bed thinking about how eventful the day had been. Still, he found it fun since it was the first time he had gone out with a girl. Earlier, Shara assured him she would take Coco to the women's dormitory, but before leaving, she even wished him good night, so he could not help thinking that Shara was truly cute. Setting that aside, he also realized the fear he once felt toward his classmates was gone. He thought he could finally take revenge, but believed they still needed to suffer more. As these thoughts crossed his mind, he suddenly sat up. He remembered that he had not checked his status in a long time, so he opened it, but he was shocked to see he'd reached level 588, with his magic and skills greatly boosted. He had also gained a new title called Hatred Embraced by Revenge. When he clicked it to open its details, he learned it activated at peak hatred, boosting him tenfold while stealing half the foe's power, then causing pain. Seeing its danger, he closed the screen and decided to be careful not to use it on his former bullies. The next day at the training ground, Hana was practicing her fireball. Without hesitation, she launched the spell forward. It quickly struck the target and burned it into flames. Watching this, Ryu commented that her power had grown and she agreed. She even boasted that her level was now around 50, and he replied that it was impressive. Setting that aside, they remembered it was self-training day since the instructor was absent, so Hana looked around. However, she saw no one came, and Ryu said everyone was skipping. Even so, she felt glad that it was just the two of them, but when Ryu heard this, she quickly said that it was nothing. After that, she urged him to take his turn, and he agreed. He then raised his hand and released a water attack toward the target. The spell struck with immense force and completely destroyed it. Seeing this, Hana was shocked while Ryu remarked that he thought he was holding back. She then said she never knew he was that strong, since he often used martial arts, but it embarrassed him. Hearing that, she found herself staring at him. She then pointed out that he had changed, which confused him. So she explained that he seemed more confident than before, and he agreed. He said that his classmates in his previous world had truly scared him, but now he was no longer afraid. Hearing this, Hana felt pity for him. She proceeded to ask if he hated his bullies. He quickly replied that he did, and that he wanted to kill them all. After saying this, he asked if she hated him for thinking that way, but she did not answer. So he continued, saying he was not a hero, and would use power for himself, because he's selfish. But he was shocked when she suddenly shouted that he was not like that. Confused by this, he asked her why. He then noticed that she was crying, and did not understand the reason. Still, she said he was not that kind of person because even now he was still thinking of her. She then declared that she believed he was an amazing person. Hearing this made him shyly thanked her since it was the first time anyone had said that to him. He also handed her a handkerchief, which touched her even more, so she told him that he was truly kind. But Ryu sighed inwardly and thought that she was the kind one. 3 days after self-training, Ryu was invited to Shara's tea party. While there, he thought the time was relaxing and the tea and sweets were delicious. Shara also said she loved this time too since talking with him was enjoyable. With that, the two continued eating in peace, but a loud scream echoed through the area, so Ryu and Shara turned toward it. When they heard it call for help, they quickly stood up, wondering what was happening. Ryu then activated his presence detection skill, and what appeared in his vision were monsters attacking people inside the castle. Thus, he told Shara there were many monsters inside, and she asked how that was possible. But he said he didn't know and told her they needed to move while she should stay behind. Yet she insisted on coming as well because she was the princess of this kingdom. After agreeing, he assured her he would protect her if danger came, and she quickly accepted. At the place where the monsters had entered, dead bodies were scattered across the ground. The knights continued fighting the incoming monsters. One of the knights was about to be struck, but Shara quickly erected a barrier, which surprised him. At the same time, Ryu raised his hand and used his magic, where his flames quickly engulfed the monster. On Shara's side, she faced a golem and used her magic as a step. She then rushed toward it from the air and struck it. Around them, the others continued fighting. After a while, Ryu checked his skill and found that there were no more monsters, so he finally sat down relieved it was over, while Shara cheerfully said they had done it. Still, he could not help looking at the fallen knights nearby. He muttered it would not have happened if he had noticed sooner, but she told him not to blame himself. Regardless, he put his hands together and deeply apologized for not being able to save them. Suddenly, they were interrupted when his classmates arrived, claiming they had come to help. However, they only found the fallen knights. Kanza assumed it was over and thought it boring, since the great hero had come too late. Kazu agreed it was a waste, so Kanza said to go back, but Ryu wondered how they could when so many had died. He then called out to them, and they quickly turned around. He proceeded to ask them to at least help carry the wounded, but the other students began whispering, where some had already decided that they would not help at all. Kazu then said they couldn't carry armored people, and Kanza said Ryu should know that. At that moment, someone in the crowd raised her hand. It was Hana, and she said that she would help. So Ryu thanked her and asked her and Shara to tend to the wounded instead. In response, Both girls agreed. Meanwhile, Kazu and the others said that they were leaving. This made Ryu furious, and he asked if they were joking, but Kanza looked confused. Hence, he scolded them for refusing to help the injured, and said they were not heroes at all. Kazu replied that it had nothing to do with the Demon King, so it was not their job. However, Ryu asked if they'd only help them and said they couldn't save the world if they wouldn't save people. Hearing this, Kazu became enraged. He then drew his sword, shouting that Ryu was asking for it, but when he raised it, Ryu also raised his own. He even pointed it at Kazu's throat. So Kazu was startled as Ryu told him that it was time to make him realize that there's a difference in power between them. But before anything else could happen, the queen appeared and asked what was going on. Both of them quickly stopped when she saw her. Kazu also smiled and dropped his sword to the ground. He then weakly asked the queen for help and insisted Ryu had suddenly attacked them. He even blamed Ryu for the chaos, and the queen listened. When Kazu declared that Ryu was responsible, Ryu was shocked. The queen looked at him with suspicion. While Kazu wore a mocking smile, Ryu silently questioned Kazu's words, while Kazu continued acting as if he had done nothing wrong. Soon, Ryu was called before Queen Lucy, so he hurriedly tried to explain that he had not done anything wrong. However, Kazu interrupted him and accused him of lying. He turned to the others and claimed that they had all seen it as well. In response, several of his classmates shouted that Ryu was indeed a traitor. Ryu was shocked and said they arrived after it was over and did nothing. Still, Kazu insisted that it was Ryu who had come late. He even claimed they saved everyone, which made Ryu angrier. Hearing this, Queen Lucy was taken aback. She then called for Shera to explain, and Shera stepped forward. But Kazu continued saying that Shera had been dragged into danger by Ryu. The queen turned to Shera and asked if this was true, so Shera firmly denied it. She explained she had insisted on going with Ryu, and he was worried for her safety. After hearing this, Lucy fell into deep thought. She then said that she had one question for Ryu, and he agreed to answer. She looked toward the knights and asked if he had handled the situation alone. Ryu replied that it was not only him, as Shera and the knights had also helped. Lucy then asked a knight to confirm, and he said Ryu and Shera had come to their aid. With that, Lucy finally understood what had happened. She curtsied to Ryu and thanked him for protecting them from the monsters. Ryu felt embarrassed by her gratitude and tried to downplay it. Meanwhile, Kazu clenched his teeth in anger as he watched. He then questioned Lucy about whether she truly believed Ryu over him. In response, Lucy said that given the circumstances, Ryu did not seem responsible. She also added that she hoped any conflict among the heroes would be resolved quickly. Before Kazu could respond, Lucy ended the discussion and took her leave. Suddenly, Hana waved at Ryu saying the treatment was done, so he thanked her and Shera. Meanwhile, Kanza watched the scene with clear dissatisfaction. He muttered that it made him sick and suggested going back, and Kazu agreed. Before leaving, Kazu glanced at Ryu with killing intent. Ryu and the others sensed it and turned to watch them leave. As Ryu stared after them in silence, he suddenly remembered something. He quickly turned to Hana, which startled both her and Shera. He then asked if she would be alright, since she might also be pushed away by everyone. Hana was taken aback by his words, but she quickly said that it was fine because she had Aya with her. Hearing this, Ryu remembered that they had known each other since kindergarten, so he felt relieved, but she thanked him for worrying about her. Later that night in the castle, Ryu stood by the window looking outside. Suddenly, someone called his name, so he quickly turned around to see who it was, but he was surprised to see Coco. After all, she was wearing a maid dress. He then quickly asked what she was doing, and she explained that she was training to serve him, since a maid serves her master. Knowing this, he somewhat agreed, but she said there was much to learn, and she was enjoying the work. Hearing that she was happy, he finally allowed her to continue. Still, he told her to let him know if anything became difficult. She was clearly touched by this, but she insisted she did not want to trouble him, so he reassured her it was fine, since he wanted to be her strength. However, hearing his words left her stunned and flustered, so he could not help thinking that she looked cute like that. Suddenly, the other maids called for Coco's help, and she quickly responded. So she then began to say goodbye to Ryu, and he encouraged her to do her best. After that, she hurriedly chased them. Once alone, Ryu returned to the window and looked out at the garden. He began wondering why monsters appeared in the castle, since there were no signs they came from outside. He then realized the only explanation was someone had summoned many monsters into the castle. After thinking this through, he fell silent. However, he decided thinking alone would not solve anything, and resolved to speak with Shera. A week passed since the commotion, and Ryu began receiving disdainful looks from his classmates. He had already expected them to avoid him even more, so it no longer surprised him. Still, he was glad that Hana was not receiving the same treatment. At the same time, he could tell that her friends wanted him to stay away from her. Their cold gazes felt unsettling, and he quickly chose to walk away. Nevertheless, he was at least now allowed to enter dungeons alone. Later inside the dungeon, Hana could not help but sigh. She saw her female classmates act timid, while the boys eagerly played protectors. Therefore, she wondered if Ryu was in a dungeon now, since they could finally go separately. She then thought that if not for the commotion, they would still be side by side now. The thought made her sigh once more, as she realized how much she wanted to see him. However, she was suddenly interrupted when Aya loudly called her name. She quickly turned to her with a guilty expression, and Aya could only sigh in response. She told her that she had been spacing out the entire time, and asked if she was all right. Hana quickly replied that she was fine, but Aya did not believe her words. She then glanced around before stepping closer to her. After that, she whispered if it was because of Ryu, and Hana's face turned red. Seeing this, Aya was sure Hana liked him, and Hana couldn't even reply. So Aya kept teasing her about how red her face was, and Hana begged her to stop. Just as Aya finally apologized, the girls nearby suddenly shrieked. The two of them were startled and quickly turned around. There, they saw a monster approaching as some students ran, while others froze in fear. Seeing this made Aya herself feel frightened, but Hana beside her rushed forward, so Aya could not help calling out her name in worry. At the same time, their other classmates tried to stop her because it was dangerous, but Hana believed that without fighting despite risk, they would never grow stronger. Hearing this, the girls were left stunned. Hana then raised her hand and stopped the monster from approaching the others. She also looked at the huge frog monster before her and began summoning wind magic into her hand. As a result, a glowing wind magic circle appeared beneath her feet. She then thought she couldn't stand by Ryu unless she beat the monster, so she shaped the wind into a blade. Following it, she released it toward the monster. Unable to dodge, the creature was struck directly. Then it instantly turned to dust in front of her. Witnessing this all, the others were left in shock. They then rushed toward Hana and thanked her for saving them. Aya also told her she never knew she was this strong, and those words deeply touched Hana. So she took Aya's hand and said anyone could grow strong with practice, and Aya eagerly agreed. Hearing this, the others also decided to join. They quickly gathered around Hana to ask her to teach magic, which surprised her, but she still agreed even knowing it would leave her little time with Ryu. Meanwhile, in another dungeon, Ryu casually yawned after defeating the remaining monsters. As they vanished, he muttered that it was boring being alone without Hana by his side. However, his attention shifted to the ground ahead. There, he noticed a large wolf approaching with a bottle in its mouth. Seeing how massive it was, he briefly wondered if it might be the dungeon boss. However, his focus soon turned to the object it was carrying. After thinking of this, he became curious, so he tried to step closer, but the wolf moved away from him. Seeing this, he figured that it's being wary of him, so he slowed his approach and tried to reassure it. After he said that he is not its enemy, the wolf responded. It even came closer to him. When it finally reached him, Ryu gently praised it and gestured for it to show him what it was holding. The wolf released the bottle into his hands. He then examined it and wondered what it was. However, he noticed something inside, so he took it out and he opened the folded paper. After checking it, he realized that it was a letter. The letter's writer said she was trapped on the 100th floor of the dungeon, so she begged whoever found the message to rescue her, which left Ryu with mixed emotions. He then asked the wolf if it knew where the sender was, and it responded to him. Upon seeing that the wolf understood, he requested that it guide him. The wolf agreed and began moving forward for Ryu to follow. Along the way, Ryu struggled to keep up. He realized that the wolf was actually fast. He also witnessed its overwhelming strength, as it defeated multiple monsters with ease, leaving him stunned. A chill ran through him, and he resolved not to provoke the creature. Suddenly, the wolf turned to look at him, and Ryu lifted his gaze as well. When he saw the number 100, he finally realized that they had reached the 100th floor. Inside, debris was scattered everywhere, so Ryu wondered if the person was truly there. On the other hand, the wolf began sniffing around. It then began barking to get his attention. He followed its gaze to a nearby door and understood that the person was behind it. So he raised his hand and used his void magic to draw in the debris around the door. Once the area was cleared, the door was finally visible. Ryu and the wolf exchanged a brief look of understanding before entering. When he pushed the door open, he was shocked by what he saw. Inside was a girl bound in chains. He then rushed to her side, but the moment he touched the restraints, a surge of electricity struck his hand. Realizing the chains were electrified, he quickly pulled back. But as he looked at the girl, he knew he had to find a way to free her. Thus, he decided to use his identification ability. He examined the seal chain and found it bound the first to touch it, and could only be broken with magic. After learning this, he clenched his fist since he realized he had no other choice. He then reached for the chains and began pulling them toward himself. When he had a firm grip, he he poured all of his magic into them with full force. As a result, the chains binding the girl finally shattered, but she lost her balance and began to fall, so Ryu hurried to catch her, where she ended up collapsing into his arms. Not long after, she slowly regained consciousness. She was still dazed when she heard him asking if she was okay. When she saw his face, she froze and was unable to respond. So Ryu watches her as she trembles, trying to say something. Suddenly, she threw herself against him and started crying as she thanked him. After a moment, she realized how close they were and pulled back. She then introduced herself as Yui and asked for his name. In response, he took her outstretched hand and told her that his name was Ryu. She then remarked his name was unusual, so he explained he came from another world. Hearing this, she immediately assumed he was a summoned hero, but he avoided answering. Instead, he asked why she had been chained, but the wolf suddenly barked at her. It also rushed toward her and began licking her face. Seeing this, Ryu asked what creature it was, and she said it was like family to her and named it Pika. After that, he asked about the letter Pika carried, and she said she wrote it with a clone after being sealed. But when he pressed further about why she had been sealed, she hesitated to answer. She then looked down and was unsure how to explain, but he waited quietly for her to continue. At last, she confessed that the chain had activated when she accidentally fell. Hearing this, Ryu fell into confused silence. He then shouted that no one could be sealed like that, but she confirmed it was true. She even gave a playful expression. Thus, he wondered if it was simply the clumsiness of someone from another world. Back at the castle inside the dining hall, Ryu, Hana, and Yui dined with Shera. After a while, Yui finished her meal. She then began commenting on how delicious the food was, and Ryu quickly agreed. Hence, she continued saying it was natural for the royal palace and the most delicious meal she had ever eaten. The two kept talking about food since Yui would stay for a while under Shera's arrangement. In addition, she would also be cooperating in the subjugation of the Demon King. While the two of them continued their conversation, Shera and Hana quietly watched. Shera wondered about Yui's appearance, while Hana felt annoyed wanting to dine with Ryu alone. As they watched Yui's bright smile, and Ryu enjoying the conversation, both felt the two were too close, and their jealousy showed. Suddenly, Shera noticed something was wrong. She pointed out Ryu's injured hand, and he explained that it had happened the day before. When she heard it, she was surprised that he had kept quiet about it. She also grew upset, and reminded him to inform her at once, so he quickly apologized. After that, he quickly held out his hand when she asked to see it. Watching this, Yui asked if Shera could heal, and Shera said she could as a royal court mage. She then used her magic, and as it flowed over Ryu's hand, the wound quickly healed. Hana then asked if it was finished, and Shera confirmed, while Ryu thanked her. He also said it was his first time receiving healing magic, and that he would rely on her again. Upon hearing this, she was taken aback, but she quickly said she would help, making the others uneasy, while Ryu focused on his healed hand. Setting that aside, Hana asked if being sealed on the 100th floor meant Yui's adventurer rank was S or higher. In response, Yui proudly confirmed it, so Hana admitted feeling jealous, but Ryu said she was close and would reach it soon. This led Hana to ask if he would join her on the 100th floor once she reached S rank. He immediately agreed since exploring with her was fun, but his words surprised Yui, and soon, she and Shera were the ones feeling jealous. Moments later, Ryu mentioned Hana joining Machi's training, so Yui then asked him to go with her to the 100th floor again. In response, he quickly agreed, and this left Hana and Shera in shock. Regardless, Yui was delighted and Ryu looked forward to it, but the others grew more jealous. Later inside the dungeon, Yui demonstrated her power by defeating monsters with ease. Watching her, Ryu could not help but remark on how skilled she was with magic. She quickly agreed, and explained that she had devoted her life to it. She also revealed she had summoned Pika with magic, which he quickly understood. So he asked if she could teach him summoning, and she agreed, but she first reminded him of something. She pointed to a hole in the wall and told him to control his magic, which made him laugh awkwardly. Nevertheless, she assured him she would teach him, and he agreed it would help. Afterward, she began to look around. She noted the boss will appear soon, and this made Ryu ask what boss awaited on the 100th floor. Yui tried to explain as they continued walking, but she suddenly stopped when she noticed something. Ryu followed her gaze and looked up. Before them stood a massive door with a face carved into it. Seeing this, she remarked that it was something to look forward to. At that moment, the door slowly opened before them. Upon seeing what lay inside, they could not help but feel nervous. But Yui quickly brushed it off and asked if Ryu was ready, which he confirmed. As they stepped forward, a powerful gust of wind struck them. When they looked up, they saw a dragon flying overhead. Ryu stared in awe at the sight, while Yui identified it as a wyvern. She then reminded him to stay cautious even if it was lower class, and he agreed while drawing his sword. After that, he rushed forward and leapt toward the wyvern. he also swung his blade at that moment, but the strike failed to pierce its skin, and instead bounced back. So Ryu trembled at its solid skin, while Yui blocked the fire and said dragons needed special weapons to kill. Hearing this, he looked down at his sword feeling as though it were useless. But suddenly, he remembered something. So he asked Yui to buy him time, which made her question if he had a plan. He then assured her that he did and asked if she could hold out for 23 minutes. After she nodded in agreement, she asked him to leave it to her and called for Pika. Immediately, she summoned her water magic. Then she faced the wyvern along with Pika. As she fought, Ryu closed his eyes and focused on the one thing he needed to do. He gathered magic in his hands in order to forge a weapon strong enough to defeat the wyvern. When it's finally enough, his weapon creation skill shaped it into a tangible sword. In that moment, he forged his own divine blade Hermes, and with the weapon complete, he turned his attention back to the wyvern. Meanwhile, Yui was forced back by the creature, but Ryu caught her and made sure she was unharmed. When she saw that it was him, she asked if he was finished. He then replied that he was and thanked her. After hearing this, she urged him to end the battle for real, and he quickly agreed. She then launched a fireball first, and it directly hit the wyvern, where it was engulfed in flames. After her, she signaled for Ryu to move. Meanwhile, the wyvern shook off the fire, but just as it finished putting off the fire, it heard Ryu calling it. It then saw Ryu and began howling at him. However, Ryu ignored it and charged forward to finish it off. With unwavering resolve, he swung his blade towards the wyvern. Due to this, the wyvern's body instantly turned to ash. After that, relief washed over Ryu as Yui happily called his name. She then jumped onto him and shouted that he did it. However, she noticed something nearby. She then pointed out a treasure chest, and he quickly noticed it. As he opened it, she began wondering what's inside. But what they found inside was a piece of meat. Yui quickly identified it as wyvern meat, but he hesitated if it was safe to eat. Hearing this, she assured him treasure chests had preservation magic, so it was safe, and he agreed to try. Moments later, he pulled a few chairs from his storage space, which amazed Yui, who had never seen anyone store such items. Afterwards, they began roasting the meat. Unbeknown to them, an old man watches Ryu's liveliness, and the man beside him agrees. But he began to question him. He also turned his gaze toward Ryu and asked why he had chosen him. Furthermore, he asked why he had granted him their blessing and his divine grace. Hearing this, the old man, who's the supreme god, fell silent. After a pause, he asked if the man had seen Ryu's life and then what he thought. The man answered that Ryu had lived a terrible life. He was constantly bullied and seemed to have given up on living, yet many others were like him. Hearing this, the supreme god said this might be why he's interested in him, which left the man confused. So, the supreme god continued, saying he wished to repay Ryu, though the man did not know why. With no explanation given, he merely laughed. Then he added that there was more to it than that. Back at Ryu's side, Yui said it was amazing they cleared the 100th floor while eating wyvern meat, and Ryu agreed. Not long after, they noticed Shara and Hana waiting for them at the entrance. When they approached, Hana warmly welcomed them back, but this made Yui wonder if she had been waiting there the whole time, and although Hana tried to deny it, Yui easily saw through her. Meanwhile, Shara asked Ryu if he had been injured, and he replied that he was fine. However, Yui saw this and asked why Shara was with Hana, and Hana said they met on the way. Shara then said she trusted Ryu's abilities, but still worried and asked if she was a burden. Hence, Ryu assured her that she was not, and even thanked her for caring. Yet she clarified that there was no need for thanks. Suddenly, their talk stopped when Yui mentioned Ryu's magic control training. Ryu then began to consider it after hearing it from her. But before he could respond, Shara offered to help him, and this confused Yui. Yet Ryu immediately agreed, which annoyed her. So she emphasized he did not need two teachers, but he replied learning from both was better. Still, she exclaimed that it would not work. Therefore, the two of them began to persuade him, while Hana quietly watched. After a while, she said she wanted him to teach her too if they both taught Ryu. But hearing this made both Shara and Yui quickly refuse. Shara even clasped her hands and said she could teach Hana, and Yui agreed. Watching the two of them overwhelm her, Ryu wondered when they had become so close. At that moment, the supreme god continued to observe them through the water's reflection. He then asked the creator god what he thought. He also said Ryu's life changed with a little power, so he thinks that both humans and this world were truly fascinating. Hearing this made the creator god smile. Then he admitted he was interested in Ryu, and asked to grant him another ability. However, the supreme god asked what kind of power he meant. So, the creator god said he wished to give Ryu something not only to forge weapons, but also to create magic and skills. The supreme god fell into deep thought when he heard this. After that, he agreed since Ryu would not misuse it, and the creator god said he would begin. He then proceeded to raise his hand, and turned his gaze toward the water. As Ryu's image appeared in the reflection, the supreme god continued to watch him. Meanwhile, Ryu saw the girls still urging Hana to let them teach her, but a soft glow suddenly appeared around his shoulders, so he looked down in confusion. He also began to panic, and this caught the girls' attention. In the next instant, the light vanished, but they still rushed to him and were worried that something was wrong. Seeing this, he quickly assured them that he was fine. He even laughed lightly to assure them that there was nothing wrong. Still, Hana asked if he was alright while Shara told him to speak up if anything felt strange. Setting the moment aside, Yui suggested going in for tea since she was exhausted. Hana then realized it and apologized, but Ryu did not mind, and Shara said the maids would prepare. So the three girls went ahead and discussed food with Ryu following them. As he walked, he could not help glancing at his hand with a confused expression, but his thoughts were interrupted when he was suddenly called. Looking up, he saw the three of them waiting for him. He even saw from Hana, Shara, and Yui's eyes that they cared for him, so he felt deeply touched. Then he hurried to catch up, while unaware that someone wished him happiness. Back in his old world, he once heard his mother wish she had never birthed him. His father, on the other hand, constantly called him disgusting. Hence, he never saw them as parents, and was used only for money like at school. However, his memories were interrupted when someone gently woke him. When he looked up, he saw that it was Shara, and he quickly apologized for dozing off. But instead of scolding him, she stepped closer. She even softly wiped his face with her handkerchief. After it, she asked if he was all right, but he could not answer after noticing tears streamed down his cheeks. After receiving no response, she guessed he had a nightmare, and he said he dreamed of his past. Unexpectedly, she clasped his hand and asked him to tell her if he had bad dreams so she could stay with him. Hearing this, he was touched and thanked her, but she said she should thank him. Later at the town, the two of them strolled around together. While on it, Ryu noticed Shara looked cute in her outfit and praised her, but she was clearly surprised, so she asked if he meant it, and he confirmed it suited her. While Shara was still feeling happy, Ryu's name was suddenly called. When they turned around, they saw Hana and Yui waving at them. Shara felt a brief sense of disappointment at their arrival, which confused Ryu, but she quickly brushed it off and said it was nothing. The others then proceed to ask if they waited long, and Ryu said they just arrived. Moving on, Yui asked where they were going, and he said there was a place he wanted to check. However, she looked confused by what he meant by specific place, so he clarified that he wanted to visit the guild and obtain an adventurer's card. Hearing this, Hana said she wanted one too, so he invited her to join. However, he stopped when he suddenly remembered something. He then asked if they needed a test, but Yui said they only had to write their information. Yet Ryu and Hana could not write the language of this world, so Shara and Yui immediately offered to help them. Upon hearing this, the two of them were somewhat confused. Later inside the guild, the receptionist gave them the forms and told them to fill them out. Hearing this, Ryu and Hana nervously agreed, but Yui and Shara quickly stepped in to assist. Shara helped Ryu, while Yui wrote for Hana. Before long, both forms were completed, so the two of them handed them to the receptionist. After a short while, the receptionist returned with their adventurer cards and handed them over. Ryu and Hana were then amazed to finally hold their own cards. In addition, the receptionist reminded them to seek help if they encountered trouble. Later, outside the guild, they discussed where to go next. So Ryu asked Hana if she had ever been to the cathedral, but she looked confused. Yui also said she hadn't been there either, making Hana wonder what could be done at the cathedral. So Ryu explained that a summoning ritual could be performed there, though only once. This made Hana ask if he had used his chance, and he said he did it with Shara. But Hana was shocked to hear it was just them, while Shara apologized. Still, Hana pouted in jealousy when she turned toward her. Later at the cathedral, Ryu entered and saw the priest there. But the priest said the ritual could only be done once, so he explained it wasn't for him. He then directed the priest's attention to Yui, and Hana then said it was for them. After that, he asked if it was okay, and the priest confirmed it. Later, standing before the magic circle, Hana went first. She then poured her magic into it and called for her summon. Meanwhile, Shara and Ryu watched in anticipation of what she would get. Suddenly, they saw Hana crouch down. When she stood again, she was walking toward them with a small dog. She even proudly showed them her summon, which was incredibly cute. Ryu praised it while Shara recognized it as a lesser spirit and asked what she would name it. Noticing its blue eyes, Hana decided to call it Sora and happily declared that she liked it. The little dog also began clinging to her and made her believe it liked her as well. But before they could say more, thick smoke suddenly filled the area. When it cleared, Shara turned toward Yui and was shocked by what she saw. A person was kneeling in the center of the magic circle. She also realized that this was an Emperor tier spirit. Hearing that, Hana recalled such spirits were rare and Shara added only 4 existed. However, Yui seemed pleased, and even proud of the result. So Ryu agreed that it was amazing, but the spirit's eyes were fixed on him. The spirit then came to him and asked if he had made a contract with someone she knew. Ryu was confused at first, but he remembered Coco and confirmed that he had. The spirit was then relieved to hear that Coco was around. However, he explained that Coco was currently working as a maid at the castle. Watching this, Yui got annoyed, but the spirit explained it's because Ryu's contract was above Emperor tier. Hearing that it was above that level, Yui was stunned, but she was even more shocked to learn he had a god tier maid, and he confirmed it. Setting that aside, they asked Yui what she would name her spirit. Yui then remembered it, and she chose the name Lulu. Hearing this, the spirit repeated the name in surprise. At the same time, she thanked Yui for the name and vowed to serve her, which Yui accepted. Back at the castle, Kazu leaned casually against the window. Lately, he had not been able to do anything the way he wanted, so he blamed it all on Ryu. Since even though Hana still paid him some attention, he acted indifferent toward her, and now 2 more girls had started spending time with him as well. The sight made Kazu clench his teeth in anger, and was unable to accept Ryu getting attention. He then stared at him, wondering why someone like him got everything he wanted. He also refused to believe he could lose, and thought Ryu should have stayed a loser. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, he remembered something, and decided to act while Ryu was away. The next day in the garden, Shara was busy preparing tea. When she finished setting out the drinks and food, she felt quietly happy. Soon after, Ryu arrived, and she warmly welcomed him. After that, she quickly poured him some tea. Then she offered it to him, which he accepted with thanks. As he took a sip, he noticed something different. He remarked the tea tasted different, so Shara explained she changed the herbs. Hearing this, he commented that their tastes were quite similar, which made her shyly agree. But their peaceful moment ended when someone came and asked what they were doing. Recognizing the voice, Ryu's expression tightened. He then saw Kazu questioning why he was having tea with Shara. In response, he said they planned to, but Kazu claimed she had already promised to have tea with him. Ryu then asked Shara if it was true, but she denied it and said Kazu promised on his own. The day before, Kazu had greeted her casually, and she quickly asked what he wanted. He then suggested that they have tea together the next day. But she told him that she already had plans, and she confirmed it was with Ryu. Yet he insisted that she cancel it since it was not a big deal. She then felt angered by his demand of breaking her promise to Ryu. But before she could refuse, he walked away saying he would pick her up after training. After hearing this, Ryu told Kazu that was not how plans were made, but Kazu insisted Shara would prefer him. Hearing this, Shara told him to stop, and said Ryu was far more wonderful. But Ryu, who was sitting nearby, was stunned by her words. Meanwhile, Kazu scolded Shara and said she should be grateful for his attention. Listening to this, her eyes widened in shock. Ryu also clenched his hand while thinking it would be fine as long as he did not kill him. And to silence Kazu's insults, he resolved to strike him down. But as he stood, Shara saw the dark aura around him radiating. His hatred fueled by vengeance was also close to activating, yet he continued to believe that someone like Kazu did not deserve to live. But Shara hurriedly grabbed him and begged him to stop. Still, he urged her to let him go, so she clung to him even tighter and refused to release him. She even looked at him with pleading eyes and continued asking him to stop. Seeing this, he was taken aback. He then gently embraced her and assured her he was fine, which brought her relief. However, Kazu witnessed the scene with burning jealousy. He then summoned his weapon out of his hand. Then he rushed at Ryu to strike him for daring to look down on him. But before the blade could land, Ryu caught it with his bare hand and fixed him with a fierce stare. He also grabbed Kazu by his clothes after it. Then he hurled him away with full force. So Kazu crashed to the ground and was in shock. Not long after, he lost consciousness from the pain. Ryu then asked Shara if Kazu could remain a hero, and she agreed they could not. So he suggested using his creation skill to strip Kazu of all but his original skills, and Shara was surprised. Moving on, he raised his hand toward Kazu and used his plunder skill. After that, he finished quickly and decided to leave him knowing he would wake soon. Shara then thanked him for everything after it, but he insisted that he should be the one thanking her for stopping him. Afterward, the two of them returned to their tea. 6 months later, inside a dungeon, Shara stood quietly as she waited. After a while, she heard Ryu apologizing for making her wait, so she replied that she had only just arrived, which eased his worry. He then said the 201st floor was like earlier levels, and he assured her she would be able to fight. Encouraged by his words, she resolved to stay focused and give her best. After hearing this, he reached out his hand to her, so they could teleport together, and she accepted. Moments later, the two of them vanished from the first floor, and they soon arrived at the 202nd floor. Ryu saw the floor was no different from below, which relieved Shara since it would be easier. They then began to explore with Shara, carefully watching their surroundings, while Ryu checked every corner. After some time, a large wolf appeared before them, and they quickly stopped as soon as they saw it. Ryu wondered why the creature was there, while Shara suspected it was a weak monster coming before stronger ones. But Ryu noticed something amiss. He looked at the wolf and saw that it was not attacking, so he wondered if it's scared. Thinking of this, he quickly pulled Shara to his side, which surprised her. He then pointed at the wolf and explained that he would pass it. Then after it, she should strike the monster hiding behind it, and she immediately agreed. As he moved forward, he noticed that the wolf only shifted slightly, and still did not attack, which confirms his suspicion. But moments later, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the air. They soon found themselves surrounded by multiple monsters, and this made Ryu glance at the wolf again. He felt disgust after realizing it was useless, and seen as an enemy by the others. He then turned to ask Shara if she could handle many, and she assured him she could, so he quickly proceeded to draw his sword, and charged toward the larger monster. Then he grips his blade tightly after it, and he began cutting through the creatures surrounding them. At the same time, Shara moved and released her arrows of light, where the monsters that were hit quickly faded before them. Seeing this, Ryu could not help but think that it seemed easy. However, the largest monster suddenly opened its mouth and began forming a powerful attack. Before Ryu could react, the blast struck the wolf behind him. As its body slowly vanished, he thought about how it had given up yet was still killed by the stronger ones. Because of this, the hatred within him fueled by vengeance awakened, and he was asked if he wanted to activate it. He then lowered his sword and answered yes, while declaring that eliminating these things was now his highest priority. With the activation authorized, his skill began to awaken. Shara sensed the change in the atmosphere, and turned back in confusion. What she witnessed next was Ryu's black hair slowly faded, his eyes turned red, and not long after, his hair became completely white. His expression was also filled with killing intent, and she knew that this was no longer Ryu. Thus, she hurriedly questioned who he was, but he insisted that he was still Ryu. However, she declared that he was not, so the white-haired Ryu grew irritated and refused to explain further. He then turned back toward the monsters, and declared that killing these pests came first. At the same time, the remaining monsters gathered before him. One rushed forward to attack, but he blocked it easily with his sword. After that, he raised his arm while saying that they were all wrong, and in the next moment, he wiped out all of the monsters in a single wave. Witnessing this, Shara hurriedly called out for him to stop, and this quickly caught his attention. He then looked at Shara and said she had great magical power that he would take for himself. While she was still in shock, she felt her body weakening. He reached out and drained her power through his hand. After absorbing it, he could not help but marvel at how incredible her magic was. Shara saw this and realized it could not continue, and she had to bring Ryu back. Hence, she drew the white-haired Ryu's attention once again. He then turned toward her in surprise, and noted that she still had enough strength to stand. But she ignored his words, and demanded that he return the real Ryu. However, he stepped forward, and declared that Ryu was already dead. He also said that this body now belonged to him, and he moved to attack her. But just before he could reach the stunned Shara, he felt something wrong with him. He found that his body suddenly refused to move. Seeing this, Shara knew it was her chance. She then called upon the glorious light, which caught him off guard. Yet she continued raising her hand toward him, and cleansed the evil tormenting Ryu's soul, which caused an immense light to fill the surroundings. After a while, Ryu's hair finally returned to black, and his head rested on Shara's lap. Shara noticed his slight movement, and realized that he had finally awakened. When he tried to sit up, he struggled, and she hurriedly checked if he was all right. She also asked what happened, and he said he activated his hatred fueled by vengeance. To clarify, he showed her the skill status, though she had not realized it could control his body that way. She then asked if he had ever activated it before. At that question, he remembered the time he had faced Kazu, so she speculated that the hatred he had felt back then had continued to build within him. And when he triggered the skill again, it finally overflowed and seized control. After hearing this, he assured her he would be careful, but she insisted he could never use that power again. She even admitted that she never wanted to see him in that state. Hearing this, he was clearly taken aback, yet he still promised that he would not use it, and she could only hope that he would keep that promise. The next day, inside his room, Ryu found himself unable to move at all. Meanwhile, at the cafeteria, Yui and the others arrived, but he was absent, so they assumed he had not arrived. Moments later, he appeared, and Hana greeted him, while Yui scolded him for being late. Meanwhile, Shara asked if he was feeling all right, and he replied that he was fine. He even urged them to eat, and Yui blamed him for their late breakfast. Back in his room, Ryu sighed in relief, knowing that he had managed to create a clone just in time. But before he could relax, he sensed someone approaching the door. When it opened, he realized someone was truly coming, and hurried to create another clone. He then sent it to greet the visitor. But the person walked straight past it, which shocked him. A moment later, Shara approached the real Ryu, who was lying helplessly on the bed. She was surprised and angrily asked if he used a magic clone. In response, he admitted that he had. He also said his body hurt much to move and asked if she found it amusing, to which she replied sarcastically. Setting that aside, she asked if he was hungry and offered to bring him something to eat. He tried to refuse, but she interrupted and told him to wait while she got his food. Before he could finish speaking, she had already left him alone, so in the end he accepted it, since he truly was hungry. After a while, his breakfast arrived, and it's a plate of freshly made waffles. She then shared she planned to serve them for tea, but he was still glad since he loved her waffle. Moving on, she began feeding him herself and made him open his mouth. When he tried to refuse again, she reminded him that he was in no condition to feed himself, so he had no choice and he allowed her to feed him. Later that day, he could move again, and Hana was relieved, while Yui was still surprised about his clone. Setting that aside, Hana said her level rose and he asked to see it. When he learned she was level 27, he said it was not bad. Contrary to her, he saw the training grounds empty and confirmed that people really do not change overnight. But their quiet moment broke when Shara shouted there was a problem, and he asked why she was out of breath. In response, she tried to explain the situation. Later, inside the castle, one of the guards delivered an urgent report. He told the king a horde of 10,000 monsters was heading for the capital, and the king was shocked. But Kazu stepped forward, asking him not to worry, and along with the other heroes, he declared that the kingdom would be protected. Hearing that, Yui asked if they could beat those monsters, and Ryu said even one double S was too hard. Knowing this, she concluded that the answer was clear. She then turned to the others and suggested using the chaos as a chance to slip away. She claimed defeating a double S monster was easy, and they were getting bored. Finally, she turned to Ryu, and he agreed while declaring they would set off on an adventure together. Later, he spoke with Coco and Lulu, who also joined, and this gave him a chance to escape his classmates. Meanwhile, at the castle gates, the heroes took their positions. The Knight Commander Gavis then declared that it was time to move out. Hearing this made many of the soldiers sweat with nervous tension. In contrast, Kazu and Kanza still managed to laugh at the situation. Ryu saw this and thought it wouldn't matter to him if they died. Before long, the horde of monsters finally appeared. The soldiers' divisions gathered tightly and prepared to receive the attack. Even then, Kazu and Kanza continued to find the situation amusing. Meanwhile, Yui asked if Ryu was coming, and he said he'd follow later since he had things to do. He then proceeded to open his status window and activated his perfect creation skill. Through it, he created an invisibility ability and transferred it to himself. Once he finished, he met up with the others who had already gathered. With Shara, Hana, Coco, and Lulu standing before him, he copied the invisibility onto each of them as well. After including Yui, he asked if everyone had the ability. Hana and Shara then nodded in response, since they'd be in trouble if seen sneaking away. After that, he finally declared it was time to go. Later outside, he stepped out first to check that everything was clear. After knowing that neither monsters nor soldiers react, he proved the invisibility worked. However, a wolf suddenly appeared and lunged toward him, so he quickly raised his hand to counter it. Soon the area was engulfed in flames, which confused the soldiers, but the blaze grew so intense, so they ended up fleeing. Meanwhile, Ryu stayed hidden in invisibility as the wolf burned to ashes. After that, he sighed in relief and decided to return to the others. When he arrived, he quickly waved to them, but Shara called out his name in worry. It was then he saw them despite invisibility, so she said the same skill users could. After that, he said he'd beaten some monsters, but there's still chaos, and it was the perfect time to leave. So all of them then clasped their hands together and activated the teleportation. But Yui was furious when they arrived, since she realized that they were still inside another dungeon. Ryu then said his teleport only worked for places he'd been, so they chose to walk to the nearest village first. Later, as they passed through the forest, they encountered a large monster. Hence, Sora and Pika rushed forward and attacked. They quickly defeated the creature, and Ryu and the others praised them. Several hours later, Shara pointed ahead and informed them that she could see a village in the distance. However, Ryu stopped her from moving forward first, which left her confused. So he said he'd made a new skill to give her, but she asked what it was. He then said it's a perception shift that changed how others saw her. He also further explained she would look like someone else to protect her identity, and she finally understood. They then continued toward the village after that. When they arrived, Ryu approached the guard. In response, the guard welcomed them warmly, and they were finally allowed to enter without trouble. Once inside, they were amazed by the scenery. Hana also suggested finding an inn to rest, and Ryu agreed though he was not tired. However, Yui proposed stopping by the Adventurers Guild first, since they would need money if they were going to live as adventurers. Later inside the guild, Shara remembered she had not registered and decided to do it. Aside from her, she also suggested that Coco and Lulu register, but before she started writing her name, she realized something. So she then quietly consulted Ryu. She stepped forward and whispered to him that using an alias would be safer. Upon hearing this, he agreed that it was a good idea, and she chose the name Shell. Not long after, the registrations for Coco and Lulu were completed as well. Meanwhile, Yui pulled Ryu aside to check the quest she chose. It was a goblin subjugation in the eastern forest, with a reward of 5 silver and 6 coppers. She also said the place was nearby, and goblin materials sold well, so Ryu thought it over. He then asked the others if they were fine with it, and they all agreed. Hence, he declared the decision final, and they set off on their first adventure beyond the capital. The day after the monster attack, Kazu stared out the window again. However, his thoughts were interrupted when someone called his name. Kanza approached him and asked why he seemed so distracted. Setting that aside, he informed Kazu that they would be receiving medals, yet Kazu believed that receiving medals was only natural. In his mind, the fireball that destroyed the monsters proved his hidden hero power had awakened, so he replied it was great and they won through everyone's strength, which Kanza agreed. Kanza then continued speaking, but Kazu's mind returned to the people who perished. He thought of Hana, Shara, Yui, and Ryu. He had also heard that the 2 maids had gone missing, which left him disappointed since he found them quite cute. Even so, he believed he had enough women, and would be more popular after his medal. Meanwhile, on Ryu's side, Shara was stunned by what she saw. After all, before her was a strange object she had never seen before, but Hana recognized it, and Ryu confirmed it was a car he made for their journey. Still, Yui did not understand what it was for, so he explained it was a vehicle from their old world, and Hana wondered if he could drive. He then assured her it's not a problem since it was far from ordinary. When they looked inside, they found that the interior was surprisingly spacious. Ryu and Hana then sat down and encouraged the others to take their seats as well. While they were still stunned, he informed them that they were about to depart. Once everyone was inside, Ryu called for Coco. He then asked again about their next destination. In response, she said that it was a kingdom called Rug. After that, he gave the destination to the car. It quickly set the route and announced a 2-hour, 20-minute trip. Moments later, the car declared their departure, and the sudden movement startled the girls. When it began gliding across the ground, Hana was amazed to see that it was truly driving. Ryu confirmed it and added it might stand out, but it's more convenient. Hearing this, Yui asked if it would just go wherever he tells it. He then assured her that it was completely invisible from the outside. Furthermore, he said it had another function, but Yui told him to stop explaining. She then pointed outside at the monster approaching, despite their supposed invisibility. Seeing this, Lulu guessed it caught their scent while Yui quickly called Ryu's attention, yet Ryu only responded with a calm smile. Suddenly, the car's screen warned of an enemy and activated its repulsion system. At once, the front of the vehicle released a stream of bullets toward the monster. The creature attempted to turn away, but the shots were far too fast, and they struck it directly, which caused a powerful explosion that shook the inside of the car. When the smoke cleared, the monster's burned body lay motionless outside. Hence, the sight left Yui and Lulu in shock. However, Ryu simply looked at them with quiet satisfaction. A few hours later, they finally arrived at their destination. Upon seeing the buildings, they could hardly believe they had reached the Rue Kingdom. Yui was amazed since the trip would have taken days, while Shara said it was very comfortable and Hana agreed. Meanwhile, Ryu quickly noticed how vast and lively the city was. Shara then confirmed Rug was larger than Gesis, which made him curious about the kingdom's fame. After thinking for a moment, she recalled hearing that the food here was especially delicious. Yui heard this and was instantly delighted by it. Ryu then suggested they explore alone for the day and find the kingdom's best food. While starting the next day, they would eat at the places they found. Listening to this, Hana thought the idea sounded fun, and Yui eagerly agreed. Soon, Shara wandered off to look around. Hana did the same and stopped to speak with the locals. Yui also took her time browsing through a pastry shop, while Coco was entertained by the sight of a cat stealing fish. Meanwhile, Ryu struggled to decide where to go, as everything looked delicious. However, his attention was suddenly drawn to a crowd gathered in an alley. When he approached, he was stunned by what he saw. Inside a cage was a young girl bound and helpless. He then looked at the man beside her and realized he was a slave trader, which made him clench his fist in anger. Seeing that the captive was only a child made the scene even more unbearable for him. He almost called out to stop it, but another man stepped forward and announced his intention to buy her. In that moment, he realized that this was not a place where he could intervene. so he turned away and forced himself to focus on finding a place to eat, even as the slave was sold behind him. The next day, Ryu praised Yui's chosen restaurant, which made her call herself the winner, though Hana doubted it. But their moment was interrupted when they heard a man calling for everyone's attention. Yui turned toward the voice and was curious about what was happening. They soon saw a man holding a slave girl and announcing an unregistered slave auction. The sight instantly stirred Ryu's anger, since it was the same child and the same man he had seen before. Yui also felt disgusted, while Hana questioned how people could treat another human being this way. Shara, who was unable to tolerate it, decided to step forward. Yet Ryu stopped her, and this confused her. But he knew acting recklessly in a crowd would endanger innocence, even though he is furious, just like Shara. At that moment, the slave girl looked toward them. The weight of her gaze deepened Ryu's guilt. Memories flooded his mind of being beaten for being slow, while his classmates watched without helping. He also remembered his mother wishing he had never been born, and his father calling him filthy. As those memories resurfaced, his hair slowly turned white, and his eyes glowed red. He then stepped forward without realizing it, and the girls behind him watched in confusion. But Shara quickly sensed that something was wrong. She recognized the change in his appearance, and she felt the same ominous aura as before. Meanwhile, Ryu continued toward the man. The man noticed this and asked him what he wanted, but Ryu quickly raised his arm and struck the man in the face. The sudden violence shocked the girls, and it also drew the attention of the man's guards nearby. Meanwhile, the man was furious that he hit a noble like himself, so he ordered his men to seize Ryu, even at the cost of his life. Ryu then quickly drew his sword and swung it toward them. Seeing this, the noble's confidence wavered. With the obstacles gone, Ryu turned his attention back to the nobleman. The man then began to plead for his life, but Ryu showed no hesitation, and he intended to kill him. At that moment, Shara finally cried out for him to stop. She raised her hands and released her light to drive away the dark energy around him. A blinding radiance enveloped Ryu and filled his entire body. When the light slowly faded, Shara stood there, completely exhausted. However, she was stunned by what she saw. She found that Ryu had not returned to normal, and he also questioned her magic. Confused by this, she wondered why it had worked before but failed this time. Suddenly, Ryu declared that he would not allow her to interfere any further, so he stepped toward her and intended to strike her down first. Hana and Yui watched this, and they were unable to move. Even so, Shara refused to give up on him. As he approached, she reached for him and pulled his face close, which caught him off guard. At the same time, Yui and Hana could only stare in disbelief. When Shara kissed him, his white hair faded back to black. After that, Ryu quickly pushed her away and exclaimed he almost died from it. While he was still all flustered, Shara began to ask if he was okay. Thus, he reassured her by moving his arms to show that he had regained control. Relief then washed over her after hearing that he was now fine, but he felt guilty, so he apologized for making her worry. Before he could say more, she apologized and explained her purification power had holy attribute, so she was required to kiss the target for it to take full effect. Upon understanding this, he apologized for putting her in that position, but she firmly rejected the idea that she had minded, and her words only left him more flustered. Before they could continue, Yui reminded them it was not the time to lose themselves. She revealed that the nobleman had fled, but it seems he got a bit too rooted, since the guards were already searching for them. Realizing the danger, Ryu asked what to do, and she said they must escape, since they injured a noble. Shara also urged them to hurry and suggested teleportation. Though Ryu agreed, he first turned away to do something important. He then approached the slave girl, who was still sitting on the ground. Then he gently apologized for frightening her. After that, he also removed the collar from her neck. The girl noticed this and stared at him in disbelief. She was even more surprised when Ryu offered her a chance to leave with them. Still, she asked if it's really okay, so he reassured her that it was truly all right and asked for her name. In response, she introduced herself as Ril. The others then watched as Ryu asked if she was ready to go with them. Ril quickly took his hand and agreed. Afterward, they teleported to a place where they were finally safe. But Hana saw it was the first village they visited, and Shara confirmed it was far from Rude Kingdom. Suddenly, Ryu asked if they could watch Ril while he found her clothes. Yui quickly agreed after seeing how worn she looked, while Shara offered to heal her. After thanking them, Ryu went to search for an inn. When he secured a room, he could not help but think that it looked nice. But as he was about to tell everyone where it was, he suddenly remembered something. He then opened his status window after recalling the strange state he felt earlier, and this time, no warning screen had appeared, so he first decided to check for any changes. Before long, he noticed something was wrong. A new skill had appeared called Great Sinner, with Wrath listed beneath it. However, he had no idea what it was, so he continued reading. The description said it triggered when his anger passed its limit and boosted his status tenfold. After realizing the danger, he knew it would be a serious problem if he couldn't control it. Afterward, he returned to the others, where Shara greeted him warmly. So he greeted her and Ril in return. But he noticed the others were missing, and Shara explained they had gone shopping. At that moment, Ril stepped out from behind her and called him. Ryu was then surprised by her new look, and thought she looked adorable, which made her smile gratefully. Suddenly, Shara mentioned that Ril seemed tired, so she suggested that they rest and he agreed. So he asked Ril to stay at the inn, and he assured her he would join too. However, he remembered he had to tell the others about the inn and Shara volunteered. Yet he still asked if he was sure, so she assured her that she was. After confirming that, she reminded Ril to rest well, and Ril thanked her. Seeing this, Ryu finally felt relieved. Later inside their room, Ryu heard Ril ask if it was true that he and Hana had come from another world. He then admitted it awkwardly, and said defeating the Demon King didn't truly resonate with him. After all, so much had already happened between him and the others, especially Shara. So as long as he could travel with Hana and the others, that was enough. Yet he also wanted to protect everyone, and that feeling had quietly taken root in his heart. With that in mind, he added that Ril was included as well, but she suddenly fell silent. So he wondered if he had disappointed her. He knew children saw heroes as world saviors, and he feared he had shattered that image. Unexpectedly, she spoke and said that he was actually cool. He was taken aback and asked how someone like him could be considered cool. She then explained that it was because he wanted to protect everyone. And since to her, a hero is not who saves the world, but was one who protected those they loved. Listening to her words immediately stunned him, but after a brief moment, he let out a quiet laugh. Deep down, he had regretted abandoning his role as the one summoned to defeat the Demon King. Before he could find his resolve, he had already left the kingdom and the guilt lingered. Yet Ril's definition of a hero resonated with him, and his heart felt lighter than it had in a long time. So he thanked her, though she looked confused by his words. Thus, he told her she saved his heart and was his hero, but she didn't understand why. Nevertheless, he smiled knowing his will to protect had grown, and he must master his power fast. The next day, Ryu took out his car once again. When Ril saw the inside, she stared at it in excitement. She also could not stop talking about how big it was. Seeing her reaction, he told her riding it would get them faster to their destination. But she asked where they were going. Hence, he said he remembered she wanted to see a big city and decided to take her there. Upon hearing he was doing this for her, her heart overflowed with joy. Compelled by her adorableness, he reached out and patted her head. So while Ril was still flustered, Yui stared at him full of questions. She then accused him of being a lolicon, and he quickly asked what she meant. But Hana joined in and questioned whether he had always liked little children. Shara also spoke up by saying she was only 15 and younger too. Due to this, the three of them looked at him and waited for his explanation. He then blurted out that he wasn't a lolicon, prompting Coco to protect Ril's ears while Lulu chuckled. Later, when they arrived at the big city, Ril was overwhelmed with excitement. She stared around in awe and was amazed by the endless stream of people. Still, Ryu gently reminded her to not get carried away. Not long after, she pointed at a towering building nearby and asked what it was. Ryu admitted that he was not sure and turned to Shara instead. Shara explained it was likely the Magic Guild, where mages studied and used magic to help others. The moment they heard it was a guild for mages, both Ryu and Ril were filled with wonder. Hana and Yui also found it interesting and suggested going inside. Later, inside the Magic Guild, Hana and Shara began examining the items on display, while Yui and Lulu wandered together. Meanwhile, Ril pulled Ryu and asked about everything she saw. When they noticed a man performing magic, Ryu thought it was indeed beautiful. So he approached the man and asked what he was doing. The man explained that it was an application of light magic. He then showed his hand and said the magic light was usually white, but he declared it could change colors, which made Ryu ask how. So he explained they altered light's wavelength with magic and it took weeks to master. Yet Ryu tried immediately. To his surprise, Ryu easily summoned lights of different colors. Witnessing this, Ril gazed at the glowing lights in awe. However, the man was stunned by the display and invited Ryu to join the guild, but Ryu declined. The next morning at breakfast, Yui and Hana said they wanted to visit the Magic Guild again, so Ryu asked if they should go back, but Yui explained they couldn't for now, since travel needed to earn money. Later at the Adventurers Guild, Ryu studied the request board carefully. He wanted to avoid danger with Ril around, but safer jobs paid far less. Suddenly, Yui raised her hand with an idea. She suggested splitting into two groups for separate missions, but he thought it's too dangerous. Still, she said they were strong enough now, and even able to beat double S rank monsters. Seeing her resolve, he suggested going alone while the others stayed together. but Shara quickly refused and was worried about him facing danger by himself. Yui also said it'd be easier if they went together, but Ryu insisted on going alone to test something. So he then turned to Shara and asked if that would be okay. However, she still refused to let him go, and she even looked at him with pleading eyes. Seeing this, he began thinking of another way. After some time, he spoke and she turned to him at once. He then asked if she'd come with him, since he might need her help if he lost control again. Hearing this, Shara's hesitation vanished and she quickly agreed. On the other hand, Yui and Hana could only accept the decision. Afterward, Hana's team left for a different request, and Ryu told them to run if they faced danger. Once they were gone, Ryu asked Shara to move out together and she agreed. As they traveled through the forest, Shara finally asked what he wanted to try. Ryu recalled his status and answered by calling it only a small experiment, but she immediately sensed that it was something that might harm him again. At her words, he looked away in guilt, which confirmed her suspicions, so she told him she knew he was doing his best for everyone. She also said they all cared for him due to that, and her words left him ashamed. Still, she added that was why she was worried and begged him not to risk himself. Though surprised, Ryu thanked her for her concern, but he also confessed his drive to grow stronger came from his wish to protect those who cared for him. At that, Shara suddenly stopped walking. Ryu noticed this and turned back in confusion. When she finally opened her mouth, she declared that she did not want to be protected alone, but her words were cut off by a loud roar behind her. Ryu also froze in shock when he saw what it was. Just behind her, a massive monster appeared. He then instinctively rushed forward to protect her, but the creature had already raised its weapon, and he knew he would not make it in time. At the same moment, Shara raised her hand and released a powerful surge of wind magic. The attack was blocked, though the force made her grit her teeth. She then pushed herself further and unleashed another wave that sent the monster flying. Seeing this, Ryu hurried to her side while still shocked. He then asked if she was okay, and when she said yes, he asked when she'd learned wind magic without chanting. In response, she proudly declared that she had worked hard. She added that it was not only her, and that everyone had grown stronger as well. She also told him they all felt the same, and didn't want to just be protected by him. She then clasped his hand and reminded him they could grow stronger together. After all, they are each other's comrades. Hearing this left, Ryu stared at her in silence, but he later agreed she was right that he was anxious to protect them. Now, he finally understood what mattered most and he thanked her. Hence, she smiled warmly in response. For the first time, Ryu felt he had companions at his side that he never had before. Moving on, they looked at the ogre's body from afar, and Shara said she might be too strong. On a sunny day, Ril and Hana were busy picking flowers in the field, while Ryu watched them since he was on vacation for the day. In truth, Shara and the others went on an extermination request and he wanted to join them. However, Shara had firmly refused and insisted that he take a break, so he ended up resting instead, while Hana is on lookout duty. Suddenly, he recalled Shara's words not to bear everything alone and remembered they were comrades. Although he agreed with her, the unknown power shown in his status window still unsettled him, and he realized again the importance of his friends. So the thought of something happening to them, or of hurting them with his own hands, filled him with fear, and just imagining it made him nervous. So he pushed the thought away and focused on how to understand his skill, like there's a guide. As the idea formed, he suddenly realized something. Remembering his skill, he created a supporter with knowledge of the world's laws. After a while, the navigator skill was completed. He then began speaking with it, while Hana and Ril remained busy. Hearing the navigator's reply, he went ahead with his questions. He soon learned there were 7 sin powers, but only wrath and revenge had awakened in him, while the rest awaited the worthy. When the navigator asked if he had more questions, Ryu asked how to control wrath, but he was surprised when it said it was simple, and only required controlling his emotions. Still, he thought that doing so was not easy, but the navigator insisted that it was easy for him, so he quickly asked how. It then explained he could use his creation skill to make an ability that would regulate his emotions. Hearing this, Ryu asked if it was possible, and it confirmed it was. So he decided to try, and he successfully created an emotion control skill. Seeing the result, he finally felt relieved. He then thought of his companions, and realized that no one would have to be put in danger because of him. After asking if he had more questions, he said none, so it then said it wanted to add something. It told him it resided within, so he needn't speak aloud, which made him shout it should have said quickly. However, he stopped when Ril ran toward him while calling his name. She then held out a flower crown and told him it was a present. In response, he thanked her and praised her skill, but she also explained that she and Hana had worked hard to make it. So, as she placed it on his head, she asked him to treasure it. The next day, they arrived at another adventurer's guild. Ryu was amazed while Shara said it was expected of Galad Kingdom, and Yui added many adventurers gathered there. Shara also said Galad's mines and weapons drew adventurers. Hence, she asked if that was why he came, and Ryu said yes while mentioning his new navigator skill, which once again surprised Yui. He also said Galad had many adventurers, but high difficulty extermination requests stayed unfinished. Yui's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and he confirmed it was interesting. After that, he fell silent for a moment before speaking again. He admitted that until now, he had only been thinking about protecting everyone by himself. He also confessed his thinking was wrong, which left Lulu and Coco stunned. Still, he added that Shara had helped him realize that it was okay to rely on others. Seeing him finally acknowledge this, Shara smiled warmly. Ryu then asked if they would lend him their strength and grow together even if he wasn't perfect. At first, Yui and Hana were too shocked to respond, but they soon smiled after understanding it. Seeing him looking down, Yui asked what he was saying. After it, she declared that she was completely on board. Hearing that, he was obviously stunned, but Lulu joined in as well, saying that she was ready to take on all the requests here together. Meanwhile, Hana doubted her abilities, but Shara reassured her she was strong. Aside from them, Coco declared that she would protect Ril, and Ril quickly thanked her. Hearing all of this, Ryu felt deeply moved, yet Shara did not let him hesitate any longer and urged him forward. So, with a smile, he finally opened the door to step into their next adventure.